Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world, watching live or actually watching the rerun of this episode or listening to the rerun of this episode on your favorite streaming platform. So, thank you for joining in for another social conference. I'm Jean-Luc, and next to me is Diego. Diego, how are you, man?
Very good. As you may have noticed, I'm actually after a long time drinking from the mug we
The
use in the intro
actual,
video. Yes, the
the
actual social
actual social
conference
conference
mug.
mark. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going a different route. I'm doing a Happy New Year Galaxy celebration mug.
Oh, you are prepared for December because yeah, it is the last day of November. We're entering the last month, the last stretch. Now month number 12 of 2021, and I gotta say it's been one hell of a year. And usually the last month is uh, companies stop their work jobs around mid-December to start preparing for holidays and the new year's, etc. Not sure how it's going to go this year, but I think for us here at Social Convos, before all that unknown happens, I think it is a good starting point to look at how we're going to do 2022. And I think that's going to be the main talking point of today, generally what we're up to in 22 as social convos, but also personally what we've got planned for ourselves, the trajectory. Usually it's, January 1st, everyone has their New Year's resolutions, blah, 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 get fit, start that business, whatever. But I want to ask you, Shanduk, what is your take on New Year's resolutions and how has it changed over the years?
Okay, so first of all, New Year's resolution, I'm big into them. My wife, she's like, nah. I mean, it's not like something changed. Why should we change like who we are at the beginning of the year? But for me personally, it works quite well. I don't know if it has to do with the iteration mindset that like you iterate every. So I make a big thing out of it. I even did a road to 35, like when I turned 35, and I kind of celebrated going to my 35th birthday. But for me, the beginning of the year is kind of, it's not necessarily a fresh start, but it gives me a perspective of what you wanted to do. And every new year, we kind of have Create Your Own. Create Your Own has been around for, I think, 5 years now. That every beginning of the year, during the first or second weekend of the month of the year, we basically have a personal development workshop, which is at a really extremely low price compared to other events that we do, just to get people a little bit ready for the new year and kind of give them the idea that they can create your own year. In 2022, we're gonna expand on that concept, so I'm looking forward to that. But I think also for me, for the past, yeah, this will be only the second time that I actually managed to think about the next year ahead of time, because usually it's in January, somewhere around January 5th. Around January 5th is when I start to think about, okay, this is what I'm going to do this year. But last year, so this year, preparing for 2021, last year, 2020, was the first year in my life that I was able to prepare for the next year in December. And this is the first year in my life that I started preparing for the next year in November.
Okay, hold on. So you mean 2020, if I got that correctly, at the start of 2020, uh, you
No,
started preparing
the end
the
of
end. So in
2020,
December of
for
2020,
2020, I started preparing for 2021.
that's when you gave me that call, right?
Yeah,
For doing
yeah,
social convos.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. So that was the first time, and then this year is the first time that I actually prepared for the next year in November, or started thinking and started noting down what I wanted to do in November. And the only reason for that is COVID,
Is it
because
due?
December is my busiest month
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
by
I was
far.
about to ask.
Yeah,
Is it due to the lack of like other commitments or business commitments, personal commitments that
it's
you
due to
haven't?
City Festa. It's due to City
Okay.
Festa. I mean, like usually around this time of the year, I'm in meetings with the local police and the local firemen and the local authorities to make sure that everybody that has a street party in December is actually registered and has the permits, the right permits, and the 31st of December that people are on the streets and that everybody has the right permits and that all the organizations that are organizing during December, that the calendars, the City Festa calendar, is being brought out in the second week of December, and that we're listing all the activities, and we're working on the City Festa app and the website, and making sure
Oh
there's live
yeah, we don't
streaming on
have
the
one of
34th.
those
We
this year.
don't have that.
Yeah.
So, like for the second time in the past, you can say almost 10 years, in December, I don't have that commitment to City Festa or to the community to be on top of everything what's going to happen in December.
On a personal level, how does that feel? Like, is it like, do you feel like you're missing something, or is it like new perspective of, what am I gonna fill it with, or is it a sense of relief, or like you're missing something?
It's more, to be honest, I do miss it. Uh, it's To be honest, I think what's the for me the break. I needed a break last year. Let's
Mm.
start with that. I needed the break. I was done and out. I was tired. So getting a break in December was kind of great. I actually talked about some people who kind of came to the same conclusion, was like, and these are all people that for the past 10 years they had like no sleep December, like they organized parties that 10,000 people attend to. So from that perspective, definitely. I do want to do something this year, and I do want to reach out to the government and give them some tips and some advice for how to approach it, especially with COVID, but especially with family as well. I do think having another year that we don't celebrate the end of the year, for sure now it won't work. People won't accept it. But at the same time, we can bring back public events, so there has to be like some middle ground, like where a compromise where we can't have big events, public events. We can't have like parties on the street, but we should be able to celebrate. Don't make it something that you're not allowed to celebrate, you're not allowed to get together with your family and those kind of things. But then the top level of the government is at all these parties and all these functions and have all their events, while they tell the rest, like, yeah, you can't do anything. Don't do something like that. Just make it equal for everyone. Give everyone the equal opportunity to celebrate Christmas, to celebrate Oruyari, and do provide guidelines. Like, I think one of the things is the most important thing is there shouldn't be any music allowed on the streets. So you should not be allowed to just put like a big boombox like in the middle of the street, and like, because that will attract a crowd. So as long as we can do like some kind of crowd control and it's in a closed environment, uh, yeah, like Gregory says, we don't feel like, if there's rules, there should be rules for everybody. Like it should be the same for everybody. Like no citizen of in Suriname should have a privileged a rule compared to the others. But at the same time, and the funny thing is, the last thing I want to say about it before we segue back into the general conversation is, back in the 80s, like, and of course I've only seen it on pictures and heard stories. Back in the 80s, this was called soup on the stoop. Like, have your soup the 31st of December. People would go to their favorite restaurant or their favorite uh, company, and they would have like a soup, and they would kind of celebrate the end of the year. And there was a pagara that was being shot. Like, bring back that tradition. Bring back the tradition of
That
people
sounds
closely
nice, having a
connected.
soup. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
people closely connected to one another, get back together and do something small. And that's kind of the direction I'm heading. Of course, we still have to have the approval of the board of Surifesta as well. So we still have to discuss this. We still have to have a written letter from the board of Surifesta, which can go to all the show organizers, that can go to all the companies that usually have their big celebrations, but also can go to the authorities. Because at the end of the day, um, it's going to be come down to whether or not you would need a permit to celebrate. And the best thing would be not by avoiding getting permits, you can avoid kind of like preferential treatment. So not having any permits approved, I think, is the best way to go. Leave the streets open. No street will be closed off. I mean, December's already busy enough when it comes to traffic. So I think that's a good starting point. And if we can go with that, I think it can grow further. And last thing, because I already said that was the last thing, but when I was studying, I did my master's research in Ghent, and Ghent has something called the Gentse Feesten, the parties, and Gentse Feesten is really like in Belgium and Ghent is like if you see it and experience it, you're gonna
I,
get like the
yeah, I think I've
Oruyari
heard of it.
vibes.
I think I've heard
You're
of it.
gonna get
Like
the Oruyari vibes, and
it's
kind
for
of what
those
happened.
24, 48 hours. People
It's
just
like
go
the streets are
like
full. It's
ridiculous.
party. It's fun. And then what happened was, at a certain point, that tradition became so popular that it attracted so many people from other parts of Europe that the local community created their own version of it at a completely different date. And this is kind of something that I think it happened in Spain as well, where kind of this local holiday is taken over by tourists, and then the locals start something back for themselves because the first thing got too commercialized. So I think that's also a trend that you're going to see. Like, okay, um, the inner city is going to be for the tourists and the people that have nowhere to go, and the locals party somewhere else, which was kind of already kind of slowly happening before COVID, but I think this kind of accelerated a little bit as well. So I do have to ask now, what's your Oruyari tradition like normally? What would you normally do on the 31st?
So for me, I'm not like the going to downtown that type of person. I actually done it once. I think it was 2015, 2016 maybe. I did it once. Had a nice spot there in Krasnopolski. A balcony view, etc. And you see the crowds. It was nice for what it was, but isn't really my thing. So I was like, check it off the bucket list. I can't say I've been there, I've done it. But usually it was either, staying at home with my family, just having some good food and a nice drink. And if it wasn't that, it was either going to the interior actually, like off the grid, because it's quite the opposite because the city is crowded and you actually find this white sand black water little creek that's very quiet, peaceful. So I've done that a couple of times. Usually people say don't go,
I was
Mofoyari
gonna
they
say
call it.
like
Yeah, don't
Mufuyari,
don't
yeah.
go. But for me it has worked. It's kind of the best time for me to go, quiet, peaceful, and you disconnect from everyone, and then in the new year you come back. So it
How
was
would you
either that or.
describe how would you describe Mufuyari for like people from outside of Suriname?
So basically, if I had to translate it or give it a general description, is people say, at least the locals, like the bad, that there's always something bad happening at the end of the year to close the year off. So they say don't go far from your home or from your family, because if something happens, the people, you won't be reachable because everyone's in the city at home. And I think that's generally how I describe it. But it's a local, I guess,
It's a
superstition. Let's
local,
call it that.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
superstition. I mean, I've done it a couple of times between Christmas and the end of the year to go somewhere as well. And I think it's of course it's a certain superstition, and some people live by it, and we respect that. But I think Mofoyari is one of the things that if you believe in it, it's I mean
Yeah.
it's
It,
strong.
it's like what
Yeah.
you believe. So
Mm.
then we come into, in your personal beliefs, and that kind of gets actualized. But yeah.
Yeah, and just like Oriari, it's like similar to Oriari, which for people that don't know about Oriari, it's kind of we're instead of celebrating New Year, we kind of celebrate the end of the year. So it's kind of for Uriari for us is like really letting all go of all our sorrows for one day of the year, and we look forward to the 31st of December to let go of our sorrows. And I do feel we need that, like as a community. So we have to celebrate Uriari, whether it's in another form or another format. It doesn't matter, but I do feel we should celebrate Uriari. So I think that's a good starting point to kick off the show because we're going to talk about 2022, and I kind of kicked it off today with sending you an invite for the first I think 13 Tuesdays of of the year. Gregory says, I'm going to get back to my studies. Good to see you guys. I'll check the replay. Okay, we look forward to that. As always, you can watch this replay back on YouTube, or you can listen to Social Confoes on your favorite streaming platform, whether that's Spotify, Deezer, or something else, or Apple Podcast. Diego, what have you so far been looking forward to the most for next year?
So honestly, I haven't been too. Well, actually, I'm lying there. I have been. You know exactly what I've been looking forward to, but
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
some complications. So I am still looking forward to VCon, the conference, but with all the travel restrictions and now yeah, COVID as well, and getting permission to get visas and everything is getting more difficult. So hopefully still got like 6 months to
To
five to
prep
six
that
months
trip.
to figure it out. But that is definitely for next year one of the highlights that I am looking for. If it doesn't happen due to some circumstances, there's going to be other opportunities. But I am looking, especially in the NFT space, the Web3 space. I am looking for very much alternative. So if I had to rank it in short term, that's kind of like in May, so that would be midterm. But for the short term, I've kind of I am committing for at least the next 2 3 months playing with Twitch and Gods Unchained. I'm doing kind of a, shall we call it, a social experiment with yeah, an
Yeah,
actual
that's pretty
social,
cool.
yeah, an actual
Mhm.
social experiment where I'll be, if you've seen my Twitch, I've been streaming almost daily, like maybe 4 times a week. So I'm almost at 50 followers now, so that makes you can get the Twitch affiliate. So I'm gonna try that, and combining that with the Gods Unchained game on the blockchain, I kind of found a pretty decent community with other streamers as well, and so it's really cool to see the streamers interact with each other, and because the community is still so small, especially the streaming community, it is for me an opportunity to test the waters. And the game is still in beta, so that child, teenage dream of becoming a gamer and getting paid for it. It's kind of interesting because you can buy and sell the cards. So that's an interesting dynamic to it. But even more, what's interesting, they're using Immutable X, the layer 2 platform on Ethereum. And I have reason to believe it's highly probable that the books NFTs that Gary Vee, the books that we've ordered that he'll dropping, is going to drop on Immutable X token trove. He has been teasing that platform. So having Gods Unchained and that being on that platform, it is a good case study experiment to get to know the space. But on top of that, what makes this more exciting is I'm relating this back to you, yeah, you with your with the Hive blockchain, and extending or expanding on that community. I actually found the Gods Unchained community, which is like very even smaller on Hive, and it's kind of ridiculous. I made my first post last week, I think Thursday or Friday, just to say I started with the game. Earned so much. Like I think I've been playing it for 4 weeks now. Earned around like 25 Gods tokens. That's around $150 for just playing something for fun. And even that post got upvoted by the community, and it was my highest earnable post on Hive, which was I think 34 Hive. I don't know what that equates to. So it's kind of compounding every section of game development and community. So
You're a meta streamer, Diego. I think to make it full circle, the only thing that you haven't done yet is actually upload your streams to TreeSpeak.
so I am starting to make highlights now on Twitch to save the highlights, and I'll probably download them later. And it's quite interesting to see this triple, I'd say quadruple stack of things that just happened within the span of a month, and how the web is developing. So if we're talking about things to look forward to in 2022, that's one of the commitments I want to make. It's at least for the next 2-3 months, be committed to streaming almost daily, publishing content on Hive weekly about the recap, and learning about the platform and how that will develop further, especially when other big projects like Gary P get on it eventually. So that's on the short term. And the other thing I'm probably gonna start in January is ITU, Impact Theory University. So curious to see how that's gonna unfold, but seeing the content and the community, how that's developed in the Discord, etc. I think it's something I'm very much looking forward to, and especially because it's still very under the 10,000 crowd. It's still something you can, that's not out of reach if you compared to if you join a community of 100,000 or some A-list university or whatever.
Okay.
So that's quite
So
interesting.
quickly, like for people that are not familiar with impact theory and the university, like kind of in easy to understand terms, what's it about?
So it's kind of, if I had to describe it, so Impact Theory is a US based company, and it's founded by Tom Bilyeu, and he kind of has been releasing over the past 5 years content on YouTube, content about making an impact, thinking about learning how to think in first principles, and business decision making, and how he's been having interviews with the highly top achievers in their fields like Tim Ferriss, Gary Vee, many people from ranging from business, nutrition, relationship, and just having an impact on the world. So, and he kind of translated all that knowledge he gained into a curriculum, and that was the foundation for Impact Theory University. So I expect to learn basically the all the things that he's gained and also his experience formed the curriculum into, and also a core community. So it's something around those lines. I can't really
Okay, no, it's
articulate
good.
it quite well yet.
I know Tom through an impact theory. I know it through Simon Sinek,
Mhm.
like the Millennial Question. I think that's one of the most underutilized videos. Even though it has millions of views, it's still one of the underutilized videos. And I feel like everybody that's, especially in an educational space, but also a leadership space, people should watch that video to kind of
I
grasp.
think you've highlight emphasized something there. The education. It's kind of a non-traditional education. It is more like developing your people skills, your soft skills, your situational awareness skills. It's not about the hard knowledge like science, etc. It that there have been pseudoscience research has been done, but it's really more about uh, leveraging experience, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I think, see, from the funny thing is, I look at it from a little bit from a different perspective. I think like a lot of like knowledgeable and like high level institutes have already signed like saying like, okay, in 10 years now from now, the emotional intelligence will be just as important as your IQ, and you have to leverage on how to do problem solving and those kind of things. But I think what makes the content very strong is that it's more practical, it's more getting in depth, not just saying like this report said that these are the top 5 skills that you're going to have to learn, but actually explaining those skills and why those skills are important. And I think especially for a community developing country like Suriname, it's quite interesting if you could make that leap, like the leap that Japan made with video, for instance. Like in the early 2000s, even I think in the 90s already, Japan already had mobile phones with a screen. Like you could actually see the other person. It was like way ahead of time. But when you think about it now, it's like, okay, that technology actually, now it makes sense. Now everybody does it. So if you can like do a kind of a leapfrog, which is also one of the popular terms that they use in academic papers, if you can leapfrog like a certain technology and take advantage, I think one of the biggest and most interesting ones is how certain African companies are kind of leapfrogging the mobile payments.
Yeah,
Like in
that is
certain,
so underrated in Africa.
yeah,
The
I think
solutions they come up with.
I don't think I have it here, but I actually want to do a shout out to like a local company, which is Mopay, uh, from Bank. I actually got my debit card, which is cool because this is the first debit card that's directly connected to your. Hey, look, we're already making promo. But it's the first debit
If
card that's
anyone from
directly,
Hackney watching,
yeah,
hit us up.
are listening. But if it's really, I mean, you have internet banking, which can kind of have the similar purpose, but you don't need to be online to use the Mopay debit card. So I think that's a very interesting technology, and I think we're under not only underutilizing but underestimating the importance of how mobile payments will play a role in a country which has a population of 500,000 but actually has over 1 million active phones. So I mean that's already giving you a perception to like, instead of trying to get people behind a computer, like just let them learn how to use their phone, and then things like security are going to come up. How are you responsible? And I think that's also one of the things that worries me the most about Web 3.0 is the ownership part. I think people are a little bit as underestimating the importance of the ownership part as well. And I think,
Underestimating the responsibility that comes with it,
yeah,
I think.
yeah, I think that's for me as well. I'm also looking at when I want to do the Impact Theory University. I'm gonna actually start off with Chris Ducker. Chris Ducker is a speaker and a writer that I look up to a lot, and he's one of the people that really changed the game from a surface perspective, as in building your own brand, but also being able to outsource certain aspects of basically the virtual assistance space. He's really been groundbreaking in that. He kind of moved away. He's British. He moved to Southeast Asia, and he kind of operates his business fully from there. And his clientele is kind of the world, but he operates from kind of, you can say, a low cost country. So that's something that really has my interest.
Oh, was that Chris Ducker you said?
Yeah, Chris Ducker.
Oh, okay. No, that's good.
Yeah.
I got mixed up with Peter Drucker from
No, no, no,
the
no.
Effective
He's
Executive.
actually, I think he might have been a student. I'm quickly gonna
Yeah, because
gonna look
that
at
is
that.
actually on my to read list now. So probably if I
Yeah.
not don't finish it by the end of this year, that's one of the first books I'm gonna read next year. The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. So that's one thing I could add to the list of 2022 for things to look forward to in the early
So
stages at least.
so Chris Ducker is kind of the grown bigger when it comes to virtual freedom, like saying like you can live anywhere in the world and still have business anywhere in the world as well. And he's kind of the living proof that he doesn't have to live in a Western country to get the deals and the gigs in that he needs to like be considered successful. And I think that's a very, very big stepping stone. And okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that, actually. So, JRK says it's old school thinking. Japan is still mainly a money in the hand country, and locally, still not a lot of people do but have a proper smartphone, let alone experience and knowledge. But I believe they're slowly getting there. Okay, I was kind of looking at it from a video perspective. I actually didn't know that you just mentioned that. And quickly getting back to Chris Ducker, I think what's interesting is he's creating the web. He has created the revolutionary part of web 2.0. But if you combine his theory and combine all the things that you can learn from him with web 3.0, it becomes even stronger because he
Yeah.
already kind of made that infrastructure that's there for web 2.0. So basically you're getting every like all the geeks and all the nerds and everybody that's kind of geek techie who's like into the web 3.0 space, they kind of know that space. But then you can also get in like the part of the web 2.0 people that kind of they're not familiar with how web 2.0 works. And if you kind in a web 2.0 way explain how web 3.0 works, I think that's gold right there. And I want to be in that space, but not specifically for the money, but as a stepping stone to find a solution for actually communities. And I think the reason why I find it so interesting is I've been watching the Spanish community, especially Venezuela, and the Philippine community on Hive, and the Nigerian community, and I'm very, very impressed. I have to be
And
honest. Like,
it's actually quite, I won't call it surprising anymore. It's quite interesting to see that the communities that thrive, that really thrive on these Web3 platforms, are the communities from countries where it's kind of, generally not considered going so great, if you look at the average. And people are actually making a living off of these platforms. So it does bridge the gap to, that I won't call it the wealth gap yet, but the reasonable living gap to be able to afford. I think I remember I was on a Twitch stream and you were talking about the Wax blockchain, etc. And there was a family from Indonesia that an artist from Indonesia that dropped a music track as an NFT on Wax, and kind of like 500 editions got sold out, and he was able to feed his family for months just having sold that as an NFT. So it's quite interesting to see
I
where
mean,
people from where people are utilizing all this.
it has to provide value. I think that's the thing that's being underestimated. Of course, a lot of crappy products, like we get to see memes that go viral. We get to see like crappy NFT projects that kind of make millions. But that's very short term thinking. I think in the end it's about value. And can you provide value? I think Devin just jumped in. And Devin mentioned something like, what's the biggest ROI you can get from an NFT? And I think we can get into a situation where people around the world are funding homes and schools in developing countries that need it most. And I think what's interesting in this space is that the whales on these blockchains often help out people from from developing countries. Like they really feel like, okay, it's part of our goal to get people that need it most to get them rewarded for the effort that they're putting in. And I think that's really interesting because I feel like that's a little bit more than usual that they actually go to the extent that they really want to help out. And I think that's really cool. So I'm looking at a certain point, we're going to look at NFT projects that kind of have like an NFT with a which comes with storytelling and like actually these are going to be projects, and this is this is where my kind of my social side kind of connects with my entrepreneurial side. Whereas I'm right now thinking of projects, NFT projects, which were kind of like the Web 3.0 forms of crowdfunding, but not for business, for a business idea, but more
Yeah, for
for
a
a social.
social, yeah,
Yeah,
for a social aspect.
yeah.
And I do think, especially if you look at the whales, they're still just regular people, and this is a way for them to offset kind of their influence and wealth and pay it forward. I think because a lot of I won't say a lot, but many people have in the past like 5 6 years in the crypto space have gone from middle income, low income, average, just being early to making tens, hundreds, or even millions of thousands of dollars in net worth over these past 5 years. And having had that opportunity, I see it in many. If you look at crypto Twitter, a lot of them kind of pay it forward to others. Like it has become kind of a cult movement to everyone putting the hashtag "Whack me," we're all gonna make it, and lifting each other up. So I think for the short term, that's kind of what people are trying to do. To get more people onboarded in the space, and the faster it gets adopted, the more people can benefit from it either way. So yeah, I do see the possibilities of it being a crowdfunded. Of course, there are going to be a lot of people trying to take advantage of the system as well, trying to rock pull you, rock pull being, starting a project. And then as the project ends, everyone funded, they just disappear, destroy the website or something, or just put a meme and it just disappear with everything. So that's kind of where the danger is, but that's where innovation, and it's the wild west. That's where innovation happens.
What I've puts in an interesting thing. I met a guy on Twitter. He makes NFTs to help his parent pay off medical debts, and now he's on his second drop. And he talks about problems, inner demons, and illustration. I think we have a long way to go. For me, I'm personally waiting for the bubble to kind of not necessarily burst, but first, I think we still need to see our first real NFT setback to kind
Oh
of
yeah,
get
I
a
want to see blood in
get
the
a
streets.
valuation, get a valuation of where we're at. Because I mean, we've seen that with the original web 1.0, if you call it that. With that was kind of the .com bubble, where kind of everybody was getting like these domains and like hunting these domains to get optimal value. I mean,
Speaking of
just
the maze, we've kind of been domain hunting as well
yeah, yeah. No,
this
I mean
last 2 days.
that's the plug. I was putting that plug in. Actually, I was definitely putting that plug in to talk about our domain hunt. But like it was getting to certain insane rates, and like I'm big on research, and I should not use the words research, but I'm very big on. I used to hate history, but now I'm kind of big on internet history, and I think one of the most interesting stories is how Yahoo kind of lost its internet dominance. Like it's a very interesting thing. Yahoo was kind of one of the first main big search engines. They kind of had it all. They were like on top of the world. And we're looking at Facebook or Meta and how they try to kind of stay on top of everything. And Yahoo kind of like most people don't know how Mark Cuban became so wealthy. Like what was the big jump for Mark Cuban? And the big jump for Mark Cuban was broadcast.com. Like if you think how much money Yahoo spent to purchase broadcast.com from Mark Cuban, so much that he could buy the freaking whole Dallas Mavericks and still have enough money to do other side projects and buy other stuff. And if you look at where the Dallas Mavericks are now with an NBA title, and you look at where broadcast.com is, that Yahoo completely yanked off the air. I mean, like, it's like how much of a, it's like one of the big what ifs. The big what
Yeah,
ifs
if
if
that never happened.
if that ever happened. I think that was one. And the second one was GeoCities. I mean, GeoCities was supposed to be the beginning of Web 2.0. GeoCities was kind of like the beginning of Friendster, the beginning of Facebook, the beginning of all these platforms. Party Peeps, for instance, if you're like, if you were over 35 or over 30 at least, you might have had a Party Peeps page. But kind of GeoCities was going into that direction of everybody having their own space. But then uh, WordPress would have been a much better investment for Yahoo to make than GeoCities, because GeoCities was also a $1 billion project, which completely backfired on them. And those two projects, like at the height of Yahoo, kind of destroyed their pathway, and Google kind of, that just came in at the late 90s, kind of took everything by storm. So it's kind of an interesting narrative to see like how things play out, and how the wrong mergers and acquisitions can kind of like completely put you down.
If you compare, before we go to that domain talk we just highlighted, if you compare Yahoo, Google, the Web 1.0 era around the 2000, how some of the biggest kind of lost their position. If you look at how Nokia, for example, lost its dominance in the smartphone or in the mobile industry. If you look at how what a lot of companies like HTC disappeared from the grid. A lot of companies that were like leading in their their niche, their industry, kind of got dethroned within a few years, within less than a decade, 5 to 10 years, and kind of totally shifted. If you look at that era and this era now, as we are shifting to Web 3.0, do you think companies like Facebook, Google, or something similar are too big for that to happen?
Oh,
Or
definitely
how
not.
do you
Oh,
feel that?
definitely not. Oh, definitely not. So I want to share something with you, because I feel like there's too much involvement of Microsoft in Facebook to ever pull a Yahoo. So I think, and it all starts with IBM. I think if you know a little bit about IBM, how kind of they originally started and what they are now, they're a completely different company than they were, like when
Yeah,
they
they
started.
pivoted completely. They were the leading
They were the leading
company
in
for
everything.
personal for computers.
Yeah, they were the leading company in everything, and they completely had to pivot because they lost the race in certain aspects. But they're still around, and they're still big. So IBM is a good example of like how companies, even though their main core product that everybody knows them from, even though if that success downs down, they find a way. I'm seeing Facebook or Meta. Yeah, we're just gonna call it Facebook. We don't care, Mark. We're just gonna keep calling your company Facebook. They're gonna be around like forever. It's the same like Microsoft. So that's where it becomes interesting, because Bill Gates made sure that whatever happened, Microsoft will still be used by a lot of people. And kind of Internet Explorer kind of lost it completely. Like they lost the battle completely. But Microsoft is still around. So they managed to at least innovate enough that was necessary. But I think the operating system works well enough for people to be like, yeah, we don't need something else. Like you have people that are like on iOS now and are like, okay, this is much different.
Yeah, it's kind of ingrained in your daily
Yeah.
routine right now. It's you can't
So
just
I do
make the
feel like
society
for
switch
me,
away.
for instance, yeah, I can't go back to working on a computer. I just can't. I think once you've had a MacBook and you've played with the touchpad of a MacBook, any other mouse kind of comes like, huh. And I think those are the innovations that really make a difference. Like people don't understand like how such a small thing can really bring a difference. And I think that's also the underestimation of iPhone, and that's what happened with Nokia. Like Nokia had kind of like one main thing. It was undestructible. And the second main thing, they had Snake, but like the Snake era has long, long passed, because there are now so many mobile games that something like that kind of like that flagship game that everybody plays. It's almost gonna become like best case scenario for Nokia is that Snake kind of becomes what Tetris is now. That you have the World Classic Tetris Championships, and that you get like this insane kind of group that completely supports and still buys Nokia's just to be able to play that game and to be the high score and become world champion. But that's such a small niche. Like the main audience, it's just not gonna happen. It's
Yeah,
just
the
not gonna
mobile
happen.
phone market, same with Motorola. Motorola completely shifted now to like corporate hardware and antennas and
But
stuff.
like yeah, so you have to start. Yeah, you have to start making decisions. And another, like, it's funny, like, Google, it's almost that people feel like they got lucky. But another big break for Google was YouTube.
Yes.
Like, Google, Google acquiring YouTube was like one of the best deals they could have ever made because without YouTube, they were completely lost as well. The game was over. Facebook had the internet. If Google didn't acquire YouTube, Facebook would have had the internet, except for China. And I think that's where and I think Google really tried too hard to integrate YouTube with the rest of the Google interface, which backfired in so many ways. I think they find a proper mix now, but to think that Google shut down Orkut to make a power play with Google Plus and YouTube and it completely backfired and they kind of changed everything over back. So Orkut is like a platform. It used to be a social platform from Google, which was built by a guy named Urkut. That was his actual name. And they built a social platform with that. And it was the biggest platform in Brazil and India, I think 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the biggest platform in Brazil and India was actually Orkut. And then um, it was kind of this cult that everybody in that country was just on that platform. And if you wanted to connect with others outside that country, you would probably go to Facebook, but you were on Orkut. And then they just took it to the graveyard, to the Google graveyard, which is it's just insane thinking about it. But that's the Google model. Like we don't care if so many people, millions of people use it. We just kill it down if it doesn't have any
Did
use.
and that's actually I think that's required as well. They're not afraid. If you look at yeah, Google is a billion, I think $1 trillion company already at this point. But if you look at these big companies, they are not afraid to invest in iterating, trying things. If you look at the list of projects that Google has killed, I was an avid user of Google Reader, RSS feeds for articles, etc. They killed that. There's so
iGoogle.
many.
Do you know iGoogle? Oh my God, iGoogle was the most perfect starting place on the internet. It was just imagine. No, but seriously, just imagine if iGoogle was still around and all your socials would be on your iGoogle, and then on another account you would put all your NFT projects. I mean, it was perfect. It was perfect. There was really no reason to kill that off.
Well, we
Really, no
don't know
reason.
that at that time with the researchers probably, but yeah, so some decisions may seem questionable, but the
Yeah.
point I was trying to make was they have killed, tried so many things, failed at so many things, and I think that is something that more companies, even if you have limited resources, should try and not stick with your status quo servers or product that you've been giving for the last what decade and pivot or iterate on things and try things out because at the end of the day the world changes and you need to be flexible enough for to still matter in the community you're in. It doesn't quite matter which industry actually.
Yeah, but I think that's. I almost want to say boomer thinking. Like having like one cash cow and kind of depending fully on that and like waiting until that cash cow just completely dries down and then they're stuck with a cow that doesn't produce and complain to employees about it to complain that the employees are the problem, so like I think that's a very uh, 20th century kind of debacle where kind of Like it's like this is the money maker of the company, so we're gonna put everything into that, and that's how it is, and they get
Yeah,
to say everything.
this is the time,
Yeah,
especially the
it's
world
it's
is in
kind of
crisis, especially here. It is prime
yeah.
time to learn and iterate in this crisis, and that's why my 2020 it's kind of mainly 2022. I'm not in the past anymore. That's why my 2022 is gonna be at least the first half mainly focused on education, learning about new spaces, learning new skills. So it's very focused on that instead of having the normal business as usual. So yeah.
So here's an interesting thing. I'm actually also going back to traditional social media. So you spoke about a social experiment, and I did a social experiment in 2020 actually, much less this year, but especially in 2020. I did a social experiment with TreeSpeak and YouTube. Whereas in a normal circumstance, I would build YouTube, and I would be building YouTube, and I decided instead of posting all those videos on YouTube, I'm gonna post those all those videos on TreeSpeak. And I posted 100 videos in a year on TreeSpeak. And the spin-off from that is like, so basically the spin-off of 2020 is the reason why I reached my 2021 goal with 1 month to go. So that's a very interesting dynamic. But now for me, that was the kind of seeing if it could work. So the experiment worked from a monetary perspective. But now what I want to do is I also want to build the audience on Web 3.0 because there's a difference of earning money on Web 3.0 and building an audience on Web 3.0.
Could you elaborate a bit what happened last week, especially on that what you're talking about, so people have a better reference on that social experiments with the videos?
Okay,
We're talking about
okay.
hype
So
here.
no, we're talking about crypto in general, but also like year goals. So beginning of the year, I set a goal for myself, which was 10,000. I didn't specify the goal. I didn't say whether it was 10,000 followers on Facebook or 10,000 followers on Twitter or 10,000 connections on LinkedIn or 10,000. And the reason I didn't specify because I didn't want to go for a certain goal which had no other value than just say I've reached 10,000. Like because going for like 10,000 LinkedIn connections, I could go on LinkedIn and connect with 100 people every week, and I would have 10,000 connections at the end of at the end of the year. Just because if I connect with 100 people every week, automatically I will get 100 requests as well on LinkedIn, and I could just connect all over the place, and then I would have 10,000 connections on LinkedIn. Woohoo, amazing! And then what does that achieve? Nothing, because it's just 10,000 connections. So I didn't want to like get to that specific number, but I do wanted to know what it would take to get to that process. Now, doing it all over the board was too much. So I figured let's just at least get it for one. So at least get 1,000 followers on Facebook, 1,000 followers on Twitter, 1,000 followers on LinkedIn or on YouTube, subscribers or on TikTok or Instagram, and but also like monetarily, like could I be able to save $10,000 or 10,000 euros on my bank account? Would I be able to do that within a year? Would I be able to have 10,000 hive power on hive, or would I be able to have 10,000 a portfolio, a crypto portfolio worth at least $10,000? So I think that's what the idea at the beginning of the year was. And I reached that goal, or one of them I reached last week. And the reason I reached that one was because last year I posted over 100 videos on TreeSpeak. And the earnings from those 100 posts jumped a tenfold this year in value. And due to those earnings from last year, basically I've reached one of the goals, which was having over 10,000 US dollars worth of crypto and any kind of crypto. So combined to it. And I think that was interesting. And now we've done that. But now for me, the problem is when I look at my views on YouTube and when I look at my
It
views on
doesn't
TreeSpeak,
correlate.
it doesn't correlate. I want to have the same views on TreeSpeak as I have on YouTube. So now I'm going to convince people who are still in the Web 2.2 space to say, like, listen, I don't care if you don't believe in blockchain. I don't care if you don't believe in Web 3.0. I want you to view my videos on TreeSpeak. So I think that's the next hurdle. That's the next step where I'm gonna have to go and say, like, okay, I'm gonna actually have to post on LinkedIn and redirect people to TreeSpeak. They're gonna be like, what is this link? And I'm gonna say, like, this is my YouTube. And they're gonna be confused. But it also solves a problem that I've been struggling with the whole year. And the problem that I've been struggling with for the whole year, and now I finally found a solution, but I've struggled with this for 5 years actually, but now it really came about. I have a Dutch audience, Dutch speaking audience, and I have an English speaking audience. A lot of people that are watching this recording, especially live, are people that would probably prefer that we spoke in Dutch. And the
Some of
audience that
them, yeah,
speaks, some of
but
them, not all of
definitely,
them,
yeah,
but definitely through Facebook. I think Twitch is different. I think YouTube is different. But especially through Facebook, a lot of people that are watching the episodes live, they would probably think like, yeah, why wouldn't you do it in Dutch? And then you with your Twitch stream, of course, attracting people that are more English speaking, but also for myself, if I'm able to make that connection and say like, social Confoes is actually for an English speaking audience, and if you're from Suriname and you want to follow it, it's not a problem. But like the main audience is actually outside of Suriname, doesn't speak Dutch. I was gonna have to combine that on my YouTube. So I would have videos in English on YouTube and then videos on Dutch on YouTube. And I'm like, nah,
yeah, it's a hot mess. It's a
it's a
hot
hot
mess.
mess. So I'm like, YouTube is Dutch, TreeSpeak is English. Problem solved. That's it. Problem solved. I have two video platforms. One is for English content, one is for Dutch content. And I think that's solved. And then on YouTube, we can go like more to the personal stuff, like more sports, more travel, and then the tree speak will be more kind of the intellectual content, the international content. So kind of that's how it kind of ended up.
So if I got that right, so 2022, the focus will be actually uh, kind of reverse the social experiment you did in 2021, kind of leveraging that to get the Web 2.0 audience on it, right?
Yeah, so I want to, because I feel we don't put in, and that's also one of the things that I think 2021 was really creating something new. And I think we kind of established that. Like, it was never about creating instant success, it was about creating something new. And I think we've created something new. And not just the show, but just in general, the opportunities that are coming in. These are all new opportunities that are going to guide us for the next 10 years. Like the things that I've learned this year are going to guide me for the next 10 years. And I think that's something that is really being underestimated. Especially I underestimated it as well. And then 2022 is kind of bridging the gap between everything I've learned in the
The
past
new
10
and the old.
years and everywhere that I want to go to the next 10 years. Like one of the discussions on Hive was like understanding like how this can be earning on the Web 3.0 can be like, it's basically your future. And like, I don't think people realize, I think people realize it, but they're still kind of in a denial phase. How the current system, kind of everywhere in the world, has completely destroyed any future for generations to come. Like the best example is that every year, a 13 or a 15-year-old girl has to go and to speak to the work leaders, saying like, guys, You can't say like we're gonna solve this in 2030 or we're gonna work towards solving this in 2050. We have to solve
Oh,
it now. We
I,
have to solve the problems of the world now.
I
Like
know
every
exactly
year.
what you mean, and I don't want to go in that right now, but I know exactly what you mean.
No,
And
but no, but no, but that's the point. Like, and the reason I'm driving into this because people don't want to talk about it. People don't want to talk about the fact that if you're in a developing country and you're working for a company, and the company that you work for has to has to do your pension, like what you're going to receive at the end of your working days, you're going to receive a small amount of money on a monthly basis, like we're not acknowledging the fact that there are big companies in developing countries where when you kind of worked for 30 years at that company, you're gonna get such a small amount of money that for some people it's not even worth it to go pick it up every month, but you just go once a year. Like it's complete devaluation of your local currency. Even for people in dollars, it's getting less. But can you imagine that if in dollars it's getting less, it's even worse for like developing countries? And that's kind of you're working 30 years, hard labor, and at the end of the road, it's like nice thank you, and you're getting a small amount of money, but you can't have any luxuries. Whereas other people who've been in the system longer, who found kind of loopholes in the system, they get to benefit from something that you don't get to benefit. It's just not fair. So if Web 3.0 can kind of solve this issue that for people that are very willing to work hard in their 20s, 30s, 40s, that when they're 50, they have something for all the hard work they've put in. I mean, that's fair game.
no, definitely, I definitely see where you're coming from, and I think we can have like a whole rant on that. We've had smaller rants before on this, but it is something that uh, we really need to drive home within a separate episode, I think. But yeah, um, but with that being said, let's close this episode off with that domain thing we plugged a bit
Yeah.
earlier. So I wanna put a spotlight on you for a bit. So you got Jean-Luc SR. Your whole brand is basically Jean-Luc.SR, Jean-Luc SR. You've got all the social media, Twitter, your website, LinkedIn, whole brand. And I think yesterday, today, we got you the first name, Jean-Luc dot something.
It's my
And I want to
first
ask you,
Jean Luc.
and
Yeah,
I want
aside
to
from
ask
the
you,
.sr. Yeah,
I want to
yeah.
ask you, what does that mean, or how does it feel for you, and how do you think it will evolve owning like your first name as a domain? Because
So
I
I
couldn't
think
get Diego that whatever it was.
no, I
It's
have to
such a
say I
common
feel like
name.
I got
And
lucky.
I'm surprised that Jean-Luc wasn't taken.
I'm surprised as well. You know why I'm the most surprised? I'm the most surprised because I feel like there should be so many French people that are already in the NFT space that how could Chalup.nft still be available? So that kind of blew my mind. Let's be honest completely about that. And I think Chalup.crypto was definitely something that I wasn't looking at. So I don't mind that that one was taken, but I do feel like the Jean-Luc.nft, that's definitely something, especially thinking of the NFT space, that's something I did want to have. And Jean-Luc.wallet, I mean, I'm still kind of like, I'm a little bit concerned. The reason I'm concerned is like the ownership thing is for me is I'm not a very big tech guy, so I'm not very big on I know the basics of online security. But if I would be really targeted, if a hacker really had it out for me, it wouldn't be fun, you know, because they probably they can't really steal or remove anything. But I already had it with my website that if my website gets into certain things, there's small things that I realize that people try to, even if it's just a DDoS attack or something small, they're just gonna test your security. Like, where are you at? Can I just quickly test? And that's the one thing where I'm like, yeah, I don't want that. I don't need that. I'm a small dog. I'm a minnow. I'm not even a dolphin. Please leave me alone and go mess with somebody else. So from that perspective, I'm a little scared. Uh, but from the perspective of the opportunities, um, I love it. I mean, there's so many opportunities with this, especially the NFT domain. But also, I think the most interesting thing to close off this ramble is that these domains you pay once, and I had it with yacht as well, which is the main reason I bought a yacht. Um, and I probably will buy another yacht in the future. But you pay lifetime, and I think that's just such a fair game compared to all these domains where you have to pay every year.
The sense of ownership.
Yeah, but it's weird, right? That the Web 2.0 domains,
It's
they
kind
are
of being
like
rented to you.
it's kind of being rented to you. You don't actually own it. It's like, yeah, we're renting it to you. We can take it back anytime now. And I think the Web 3.0 domains, those are really the domains that kind of you have like complete ownership and it's yours. You just buy it once and it's yours.
No, I really think it was awesome when I saw it. That's why I shared it immediately. And
And I jumped
we,
in. I usually don't jump into things that you share
we were talking
immediately.
about Black Friday, Cyber Monday overrated, but
Yeah,
this was one of those deals.
yeah, yeah. This was one of those deals that I was like, yeah, okay, we're gonna do this. And which is the funny thing because for Black Friday I didn't buy anything.
Me
So the
neither.
question now to you is like, which domains did you get your domains that you wanted in the end?
I actually already had Confoes.nft and Confoes.wallet. Like I got it like a month ago, so I didn't know about this deal. So I did try to take advantage. I did bought some fun domains to play with. We'll see what if something comes out of it. Uh, I had a few friends in the Telegram. They had like 16 domains that they bought. Like so kind of domain farming, but it
Yeah.
is quite interesting. I pulled the trigger today because gas fees were ridiculously low on Ethereum for the convos.eth domain. So
Oh, okay.
we also own the
Congrats.
convos.eth domain now.
Congrats.
And what else? Yeah, I already had my own name .eth, so that
Mm.
was kind of what gave me the ENS airdrop. So yeah, it's kind of really cool to have that sense of ownership and domain. And if we're talking about the web, it is kind of your identity. It's kind of your home address in the virtual world. And having that, it's kind of like buying a house, like the street where you're gonna live, where everything is pointed to. If you have, postal, if you have, a delivery address, it's kind of like that. And that's kind of how I see it as well. So that's why I kind of diversified and invested in domains as well. There has been emphasis, in dot com and going into Web 2 to take ownership of your name. So this is taking it to the next step.
I think it's a really interesting space. I just want to point out that Jager said he bought socks on Black Friday. So to close it off for our viewers is, and I think we could still do a over under if you want to. But the question that we have for this week is, what is the funniest thing that you bought on Black Friday?
Ever?
Yeah.
I actually can't come up with anything. I barely do any shopping on Black Friday. It's either before or during the holidays. But yeah, I can't come up with anything. But this year, I'd say one of my best investment. What has been one of my best investments this year was in NFT. Any NFT.
Yeah, I put some funny things as well. On Black Friday, I've mostly bought useful stuff. I think the only thing that has not been useful is I don't even know where it is at the moment. My headphones. I think my son dropped my headphones a little bit too often, so those don't work. My
Oh,
last year's Black Friday
here's one
headphones.
funny thing. Japanese curry
Japanese curry
blocks.
blocks. Yeah,
And I can attest, they taste really good.
they taste good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, of
Okay,
course, if you got
so
a good chef, but that speaks for itself.
I think we can do two over unders each.
Sure, let's keep it very brief, no long explanations. Why don't you go first?
You want me to ask you first?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna start off easy. Play to earn.
Play to earn. Um, it used to be heavily underrated, and I'd say it's just underrated right now because more people are seeing the value in it, especially in the with Web 3.0 getting coupled to it. So it is still very underrated, but not as much anymore. Um, yeah, I'd say underrated, just to keep it simple. Um, okay, since we talked about 2020 Oroyadi, how to close it off, the interior of Suriname, underrated, overrated.
heavily, heavily, heavily underrated. This is just heavily underrated. I think um, there's so many levels to how it's underrated. I'm gonna give you the first level. I have a niece who has really traveled the world. She has seen like every part of the world, every continent, oh, and I think she has seen over 150 countries. And she says one of the most remarkable things about Suriname in the interior is the sky. Like if you go to the interior of Suriname and you lie down on the floor at night and you watch the sky, it's gonna be the most stars you've ever seen
I
in your
I
life.
can attest to that, and I have the photos to prove it. And
I think this is like heavily, heavily, heavily underrated. Like the sky in the interior in Suriname at night is nothing can match that. So you start with that. Then you start with the fact that we're the most forested country in the world with 93% rainforest, which is like also makes it very at ease because it's quite warm and quite humid. But due to the forestation, it kind of helps that you don't feel like it's overheated. Then you get to the water, like the Sulas and the different rivers. And that's also something like nature suiting you that you can just sit down somewhere and you get a water massage for yourself and you just sit down. And there's so many levels to the interior of Suriname that are underestimated. Like one of the most beautiful things I've seen in my life, and this is really gonna sound very crazy, but when you're on the water, like you're on the river, the upper Sudanese River, and it has rained, and there's a very very strong sun hitting um, hitting the water and the what do you call it? The
yeah, the
rocks,
surface. Yeah,
the surface. So the surface of the water, but especially the rocks. So when the rocks are wet and the sun hits, like hard sun hits the rock, there's this kind of smog that
yeah.
arises. And that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. So these are really, really things. And these are just four things that come top of my head. But the interior of Suriname is completely, completely underrated.
All right. Second one for you.
Uh, t-shirts as merch.
I'd say properly rated for this one. For me at least. I'm not really a merch person, but I can see and appreciate the value, like the representation, like the status that it can give to people owning that. And then it falls into the same segment again as ownership and owning a physical product and representing a brand or an idea you like. But for me, it's properly rated because I'm not that heavily into merch, but I like to keep it simple, like minimal shopping, etc. So that's why I put it properly rated.
Would you buy NFT T-shirt?
You mean like a virtual or
No, like
a
one you could actually wear. Like it would be sent to you. If you would pay, you have to pay $50
probably
for
not.
an Impact Theory key T-shirt.
Probably not.
Yeah,
I assign more value to the digital flex than the physical flex,
interesting,
personally.
interesting,
Yeah. I-
interesting.
If I
I
had
quickly want to
to
jump into
Yeah,
this.
if I
Uh,
had to word it
yeah,
like that, if I had to, put a weight on a scale, I'd put more, weight on the virtual than the physical.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I do understand that. It's like Jaeger says, like the NFT can be seen online by more people. I think I like the physical because I like to support, like locally, especially locally. But Dapper Labs works is working together now has a partnership, and it was released on Twitter today where they're working away with together with Infinite Objects, I think, is the company is called. So you can have your NBA Top Shot in like this nice, really nice frame, and then it just plays, and you just can put it on a wall. And your NFT plays
Yeah, I
in
think
like a
I've seen
really
that.
flat.
People also did that, a similar thing with his
Yeah.
artwork. Yeah. It looks
So,
really cool though, but yeah.
but the small one is 199, and like the big one is like 399, and like the most expensive NBA Top Shot that I have is like 360. So like I'm gonna pay 399 to have a $360 moment in a $399 frame. I think kind of doesn't make sense yet. So either I'm gonna wait till it's less expensive, or I'm gonna find a cheaper kind of display that I can put a USB in and it displays my NBA Top Shot. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet.
Jill just got us at the end. Hey Jill, welcome to our end stream. But uh, since she jumped in, I'm gonna ask you the last one here. Curacao, the island, overrated or underrated?
Wow, you had to put in the plug. I love it. I love it. So we're gonna go definitely gonna go with underrated. And underrated right now, as in a location that you can go to that you're out a lot on the beach. I think beach locations are really, really underrated at the moment, especially due to COVID. I do believe chances of getting COVID are much, much, much less in on a beach with the sun than they are like cramped in like a air conditioned area with uh, less quality ventilation. So I think from that perspective, um, underrated for Suriname because of the shared history and the connection to the Netherlands. Um, we have kind of this interesting culture, which is really I really want to see that for myself. We have kind of this U.S. culture. We're very, very U.S. based in the
We're very
sense like
westernized. Yeah, like US westernized.
U.S. based, not even westernized, U.S. based westernized, because all of the movies we don't have like it's a funny thing that I always tell people in Europe, like especially Germans, like in Germany all the movies are dubbed, right? It's not just subtitled. In the Netherlands, all the movies are subtitled and some of the movies are dubbed in Dutch, but in Germany all the movies are dubbed in German. So, and we don't have the money or the industry to dub videos in Dutch, and we certainly don't have the money to do subtitles either. So basically, in Suriname, if you're big on movies, you learn English quite quickly. Um, so we kind of tend to have a lot of people that are interested in going on a vacation in the U.S., which kind of is getting harder every year, I guess, for people to get a visa to go to the U.S. But I think what's underrated is that Curacao is the joint history with Suriname that it has. For me personally, as well, it's a Caribbean country, which means I can get in easier with a visa. And there are also certain things that are different. Like, for instance, in Suriname, we don't have white beaches. I want to go to a white beach and I want to lay down on a white beach and I want to go swimming and be able to see my hands. And also, the pictures are going to be quite nice. And then there are a couple of things that I really want to try. One of the things is in the package, because we went out to pick out the package from Curacao. There were these Curacao cheese balls. They look a lot like bitterball, but they are with cheese filled. And oh my god, those are delicious. Yes. So I do want to check out the food. I do want to check out the culture. There are a lot of bridges, so that's fun as well. I'm not looking forward to going down from a bridge, but most likely it's still on my bucket list, so I have to do it. So I think there will be a lot of fun things. And one of the things that I really want to learn a little bit more as well, which is more from the sports background, I do want to meet or learn a little bit more about the national team of Curacao because they've transitioned similar to Suriname. They were before Suriname, so they're further along in the process of getting players who have like roots and roots from Curacao to allow them to play for the national team, and that's something that Suriname has done as well. So I do really want to learn how their process went and how they are trying to get into the World Cup as well, just like we are, and how they did that process. So those are the things that I'm really looking forward to.
Awesome. Looking forward to the content that's gonna come out of that
So I'm not
as
sure
you as you
if you've
commit to.
mentioned I'm not sure you've mentioned to the audience because next week we will have Confoes 48, but I think Confoes 49 will be 3 weeks from now.
Oh, we already have someone booked for 14.
We have somebody booked for 14.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
We'll talk about this in
It's
the
gonna be
after
awkward.
show. But
We'll talk about this in the after show.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah. But most
uh,
likely there will be no convos on the 14th. Joe's laughing in the background now. But we will have a 20 show on the 21st and a show on the 28th, I guess.
yeah, we'll arrange it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we'll
this
figure
was
it out.
a good episode to check in on what we're gonna do in 2022. So to recap real quick, for me the focus is gonna be really on learning and education, and trying out new stuff. And I guess for you it's gonna be more like the reverse
Bridging
experiment.
Web 2.0.
Yeah.
Yeah, bridging Web 2.0 and Web 2.0. I think that's my main goal for next year.
Awesome. All right, guys, this was it for Social Convos 47. We will hit episode 50 at the end of the year. And we would like to thank you guys for tuning in weekly, as always. And we look forward to the start of 2022 as well. We will
Awesome.
continue. With that
Awesome.
being said, roll us
This
out.
this was Social Confluence. See you back next week, same place, same time. Bye bye.